In the world of higher education, fraternities often stand as symbols of camaraderie, brotherhood, and lifelong friendships. However, beneath the surface of these social organizations, a darker tradition often lurks. Hazing. Hazing is a ritualistic test and task system, often physically challenging or humiliating, that fraternity pledges must undergo to gain membership. It is a rite of passage designed to strengthen bonds between members, but it often strays into dangerous territory. Hazing practices vary widely between fraternities and universities, but they often involve physical tasks, excessive alcohol consumption, sleep deprivation, and psychological torment. These rituals are typically shrouded in secrecy, with pledges sworn to silence about the details of their experiences. This secrecy often serves to protect the fraternity from scrutiny and perpetuates the cycle of hazing. One of the most common forms of hazing involves excessive alcohol consumption. Pledges may be forced to drink large quantities of alcohol in a short period of time, often leading to alcohol poisoning. This practice is not only dangerous but can also be fatal. The body's ability to process alcohol is limited, and consuming too much too quickly can lead to coma or even death. Physical hazing is another common practice. This can range from strenuous exercise and endurance tests to outright physical abuse. Pledges may be subjected to beatings, forced to stand or sit in uncomfortable positions for extended periods of time, or subjected to branding or other forms of bodily harm. These practices can lead to serious injuries and long-term physical damage. Sleep deprivation is another form of hazing often used by fraternities. Pledges may be forced to stay awake for extended periods of time, disrupting their normal sleep patterns and leading to physical and mental health issues. Lack of sleep can impair cognitive function, lead to mood swings, and cause hallucinations in extreme cases. Psychological hazing is also prevalent in many fraternities. This can involve humiliation, isolation, or the creation of stressful or frightening situations designed to break down a pledge's mental resilience. The psychological impact of such practices can be severe, leading to anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. The most severe and tragic consequence of hazing is the loss of life. There have been numerous instances where hazing rituals have resulted in fatalities. These deaths are often the result of excessive alcohol consumption leading to alcohol poisoning, physical abuse leading to fatal injuries, or severe psychological stress resulting in taking of one's own life. The tragic reality is that these deaths are entirely preventable. The dangerous and often reckless practices associated with hazing carried out under the guise of tradition and camaraderie can escalate to a point where lives are at risk. The dangers associated with hazing are not limited to the immediate physical or psychological harm, however. The culture of hazing can also lead to long-term issues. Pledges who endure hazing often feel a need to perpetuate the cycle, subjecting future pledges to the same ordeals they faced. This perpetration of hazing culture can lead to increasingly dangerous practices as each generation of fraternity members seek to outdo the last. The secrecy surrounding hazing can create an environment where abuse and misconduct go unchecked. Pledges are often reluctant to report hazing for fear of reprisal or ostracization. This silence allows dangerous practices to continue and can even embolden perpetrators to escalate their behavior. Thank you to Elate Apparel for sponsoring today's video. Watching true crime can be intense and suspenseful, and it's important to be comfortable while you're engrossed in the story. That's why Elate casual shorts are the perfect choice for your true crime binge sessions. The front and back panel have differing lengths to give you full coverage. The side slit adds a touch of style and breathability, so you can stay cool and comfortable even during the most gripping moments. And with 2 pockets, you can keep your phone, snacks, and other essentials within reach without having to get up and interrupt the flow of the story. Elate currently carries 3 colors: black, forest green, and sangria red. Simply use code 15WICKED at checkout to receive 15% off of your purchase of Elate Casual Lounge shorts. That's 15WICKED, and the link is in the description below. Alright, back to the story. In the heart of Belgium, a vibrant country known for its rich history and culture, a young man named Sanda Dia embarks on a journey of knowledge and self-discovery. Sanda, a proud engineering student of African descent, steps into the world of higher education with a determination that is palpable. His journey begins at the renowned Catholic University of Leuven, a prestigious institution known for its academic rigor and commitment to intellectual growth. The university, with its grand buildings and century-old traditions, is a beacon of knowledge and opportunity. It is here that Sanda hopes to hone his skills, broaden his horizons, and lay the foundation for a successful career. His time at the university is marked by academic excellence. Sanda's intelligence shines through in his studies, earning him the respect of his peers and professors alike. His dedication to his coursework, coupled with his natural curiosity, propels him to the top of his class. Sanda's academic journey is not merely about grades and accolades, but about the pursuit of knowledge and the desire to change the world around him. In the midst of his academic journey, Sanda's path intersects with the infamous fraternity known as Reuzegom. This society, notorious for its extreme initiation rituals and elitist reputation, casts a long shadow over the university's social landscape. Reuzegom, with its history steeped in tradition and exclusivity, is a place of power and privilege. Despite the fraternity's lack of diversity, Sanda perceives it as a gateway to influential connections. He sees beyond the fraternity's reputation, focusing instead on the potential opportunities it presents. To Sanda, Reuzegom represents a stepping stone towards his career aspirations, a platform that could propel him into circles of influence and power. Faced with the decision to join the fraternity, Sanda chooses to brave the challenge that lie ahead. He is aware of the trials and tribulations that come with its initiation process, yet he is undeterred. He is willing to navigate the treacherous waters of hazing rituals, driven by the promise of a brighter future. The initiation process into the fraternity begins with a task that on the surface appears harmless. Sanda, along with 2 other pledges, is tasked with selling roses on the bustling streets of Leuven. The task, seemingly simple, is the first step in a series of grueling challenges that await them. Despite his best efforts, Sanda finds himself struggling in this initial task. He navigates the busy streets, roses in hand, trying to persuade pedestrians to purchase the flowers. Yet, despite his persuasive attempts and charming demeanor, the other pledges manage to sell more roses, leaving Sanda in last place. The punishments that Sanda faces as a result of his performance in the rose-selling task are severe. They involve the consumption of copious amounts of alcohol, a common yet dangerous practice in fraternity hazing rituals. The fraternity's rules dictate that Sanda must comply, and so he does, despite the discomfort that begins to creep into his body. Sanda finds himself consuming 1.5 bottles of gin, a quantity that would affect even the most seasoned drinkers. The alcohol courses through his veins, its effect becoming increasingly apparent. His body starts to sway under the influence, the world around him blurring into a dizzy haze. The following video shows Sanda and several fraternity members making their way through the streets of Leuven. Sanda is visibly drunk, almost unresponsive. As the evening unfolds, Sanda finds himself intoxicated as the hazing continues relentlessly. The second task of the initiation sees the pledges on their knees, answering questions posed by the fraternity members. Each incorrect answer demands further drinking. For Sanda, already reeling from the effects of alcohol, this task proves particularly punishing. He has already consumed 1.5 bottles of straight gin, a quantity that leaves him staggering on the edge of consciousness. Sanda's condition is in decline. He is unable to walk unaided. His skin is worryingly discolored. Yet the fraternity's activities continue unabated. The final task of the evening is a dangerous game of guessing how many beers they can consume without losing consciousness. The exact number of beers Sanda claims he can still consume is uncertain. However, it is said that he manages to drink 6 or 7 more beers during this task. After consuming 5 beers, he vomits. Yet he is compelled to continue. After the 6th or 7th beer, Sanda's world goes dark as he passes out. A disturbing tradition of the fraternity dictates that if a pledge passes out, the official members urinate on them. As it happens, all 3 pledges succumb to unconsciousness that night and are subjected to this degrading act. The fraternity members, showing some semblance of concern, place the unconscious pledges in the recovery position to prevent them from choking on their own vomit if they were to throw up again. As midnight approaches, the fraternity members transport the 3 pledges back to their student accommodations. In another act of cruelty, they tape shut their water supply to the taps, ensuring that the pledges can't dilute their alcohol consumption with water. The first night of hazing comes to an end, but the hazing ritual is far from over. As dawn breaks on the following, the members of the fraternity engage in further acts of degradation. They cut chunks of their hair from the heads of the unconscious pledges, spreading Nutella and ketchup all over them and their bedrooms. Sanda appears particularly affected. He is unresponsive and has to be carried out of his bed. His body is heavy, his mind lost in the fog of intoxication. He seems disconnected. His response is slower than the other 2 pledges. Despite his alarming state, the fraternity members commence their journey to a cabin in the woods, owned by the family of one of the fraternity members. The journey to the cabin is punctuated by several stops. At one point, they are approached by a woman. She inquires about Sanda's well-being, her concern evident. However, the fraternity members dismiss her worries and continue on their journey. The group splits up, with the pledges being taken directly to the cabin while the fraternity members make a detour to a local pet store. They purchase fish, eels, bird food, and live mice. Their shopping spree continues at a store called Exotic World, where they buy lots and lots of fish oil. The fraternity members arrive at the cabin after the shopping spree. The pledges, despite their weakened state, are immediately tasked with digging 3 wells. The final day of hazing has begun, marking the beginning of a series of events that will forever mar the fraternity's history. The frigid December air bites at the pledges' exposed skin, the freezing water in the wells adding to their discomfort. The next task in the hazing ritual is announced, a task that involves swallowing a live goldfish and then drinking fish oil. The act is not only disturbing but also poses a risk to their health. Yet the fraternity members show no signs of concern. They're focused solely on the completion of the ritual. Following the consumption of the goldfish, the pledges are handed bottles of fish oil. The oil, known for its strong and unpleasant taste, is hard to stomach. Yet the pledges are expected to drink the oil so they can regurgitate the goldfish that they had just swallowed. Sanda, despite his weakened state, complies with the task. He swallows the live goldfish, a feat that requires him to suppress his natural instincts. The sensation of the small creature sliding down his throat is unsettling, yet he manages to complete the task. He then begins to drink the fish oil. The oil, with its repulsive taste, proves to be a challenge. He gags, the goldfish oil inducing a strong urge to vomit, but he cannot manage to regurgitate the goldfish, so he is forced to consume more and more fish oil. All while fraternity members kick at the backs of the pledges. Afterwards, the pledges are subjected to a question and answer task. The reward for a correct answer is a sip of water or sports drink, a small mercy in the face of their ordeal. However, a wrong answer results in a punishment that involves consuming repulsive substances. Sanda, still reeling from the effects of the combined torture, struggles to keep up. As the evening deepens, the temperature drops further. The water in their wells, initially cold, now feels like ice against their skin. Yet the hazing continues. The next task involves catching and eating a live eel. The fraternity members throw an eel into each of the pledges' wells. The eels, disoriented and frightened, squirm and wiggle in the cold water. Sanda, despite the numbing cold and the disorienting effect of the alcohol, braces himself for the task. He plunges his hands into the icy water, his fingers closing around the eel's slippery body. The next part of the task is even more gruesome. Sanda, his face pale and his hands trembling, brings the eel to his mouth. The taste of the creature is as repulsive as its texture, a combination of sliminess and grittiness that makes his stomach churn. Yet he forces himself to complete the task. Throughout this ordeal, the fraternity members add to the pledges' humiliation by lightly kicking them in the back and urinating on them. The latter act, they claim, is to keep the pledges warm. However, it serves only to further dehumanize and degrade them. Some fraternity members notice Sanda's deteriorating condition and pull him out of the well to warm him up. However, their concern is short-lived. Within minutes, Sanda is thrusted back into the freezing well, and more water is poured over him. The following clip shows Sanda in the well being subjected to the continued hazing, his body almost limp and unresponsive.
Ik 10 seconden, als jullie niet aan zijn, ik doe het niet meer. Kom op, Sanda, als je dit niet doet, dan moet je gewoon een vuurlinie zitten doen. Kom, Sanda, kom en probeer die voeten bewegen, man.
Traditionally, the fraternity's hazing ceremony includes a bell that the pledges can ring if they wish to withdraw from the process. However, on this faithful day, the bell is absent, forgotten at home by one of the fraternity members. This oversight leaves the pledges without a clear way to signal their surrender, trapping them in a seemingly endless cycle of torment. As the night wears on, the hazing takes a turn for the worse. One of the fraternity members defecates on one of the pledges, adding a new level of degradation to the already horrific ordeal. The exact pledge who suffers this indignity remains unclear. At this point, Sanda is unconscious on the grass. Despite his alarming state, the fraternity members decide it's time for dinner. They serve each pledge a sausage, which they cover in toothpaste. Following this peculiar meal, they douse the pledges with 10 more buckets of ice-cold water before throwing a firework into each well. By this point, Sanda is completely unresponsive, disconnected from his surroundings. Concerned by his well-being, the other 2 pledges manage to pull Sanda out of the well. They lay him down by a nearby campfire, changing him out of his wet clothes and into dry ones in an attempt to warm him up. None of the fraternity members assist in this endeavor. Following this, the fraternity members decide to introduce a new task involving a live mouse. The mouse is placed into a blender, the resulting blend meant to be consumed by the pledges. The pledges are also instructed to bite the head off of a live mouse. However, before this task can commence, the fraternity members finally begin to show concern for Sanda's well-being. They place him on a trash bag in front of the fire for a short while before moving him into the car. The heating in the car is only kept on for about 5 minutes before they decide to remove Sanda and place him back by the campfire. Sanda remains unresponsive, his condition deteriorating rapidly. One of the other pledges attempts to give Sanda a soda, hoping the sugar might revive him, but a fraternity member forbids it. Sanda soon curls into the fetal position, emitting strange noises that fill the air with a sense of foreboding. It's only as Sanda's condition worsens by the second that the fraternity members realize something is seriously wrong. At this point, a phone call is placed to the emergency services. The fraternity members decide the best course of action is to take Sanda directly to the hospital. They inform the emergency services that Sanda is extremely cold and exhausted. But crucially, they fail to mention the vast amounts of fish oil and other unusual substances they had forced him to consume. As the fraternity members move Sanda into the car for the journey to the hospital, they don't place him on the back seats where he could benefit from the car's heating. Instead, they place him in the trunk. The trunk, with little to no insulation from the freezing December temperatures, means that Sanda must endure the entire journey without any heating, still freezing cold. It also means that it's next to impossible to monitor Sanda's condition during the journey. The fraternity members decide to postpone the final stage of the hazing, which would have been to lie naked in the forest for 2 hours alone. But unbeknownst to them, Sanda would never be discharged from the hospital. The group arrives at the hospital with Sanda. He is immediately admitted and diagnosed with severe hypothermia. His body temperature has plummeted to a mere 80 degrees Fahrenheit, almost 20 degrees below the typical 97 to 99 degrees. Sanda is in a life-threatening condition, but the doctors are yet to realize the full extent of his predicament. The high levels of salts in his blood from the fish oil, coupled with severe dehydration, results in multiple organ failure. The other 2 pledges are also admitted to the hospital, but they are discharged soon after. Sanda is transferred to another hospital, where they discover the alarmingly high salt content in his blood and alert police. While Sanda's parents rush to the hospital to be by his side, the fraternity members instruct the other members to delete all messages and videos from the initiation, and to clean up all evidence of the hazing. They clean up the campsite next to the cabin and fill in the wells. Their intention is to leave no trace of their activities, so when the police inevitably arrive to investigate, they will find nothing. Despite their efforts to erase the evidence, however, the messages, images, and videos are later recovered by investigators. 2 days after being admitted at the hospital, Sanda passes away from multiple organ failure. Sanda, a 20-year-old civil engineering student at one of the country's most prestigious universities, is now gone as a result of a barbaric and horrific hazing ritual. This moment is a grim reminder of the devastating consequences of hazing. The fraternity members, in their pursuit of tradition and power, pushed Sanda to the brink. Their actions and their silence had led to a tragedy that could have been prevented. In the aftermath of Sanda Dia's tragic demise, the fraternity Reuzegom, once a symbol of power and prestige within the university, finds itself in the eye of a storm. The hazing ritual that led to Sanda's death sparks outrage, not just within the university but across Belgium and across the globe. The fraternity is immediately disbanded by the university. The fraternity's activities are halted, its members ostracized. The university holds a disciplinary hearing in the wake of Sanda's death. The outcome of this hearing is shockingly lenient. All 18 members are allowed to continue their studies at the university, providing they complete 30 hours of community service and write a paper. This is their punishment for the death of Sanda Dia, a decision that sparks widespread controversy. Many speculate that the university's light punishment is due to the fact that the 18 members come from extremely wealthy and influential families. The case takes 2 years to reach the courts, in part because one of the accused is the son of a high-ranking judge. Other members also have connections to legal professionals, which could lead to conflicts of interest and potentially result in mistrial. After a lengthy period, the case finally begins. The charges brought against the accused include involuntary manslaughter, degrading treatment, and administration of harmful substances. The trial, which unfolds over several months, is closely watched by the public. The fraternity members' actions during the initiation and their failure to provide Sanda with the necessary medical attention are scrutinized. The court hears testimonies from various witnesses, including the other pledges who were present during the initiation. On May 26, 2023, at the Antwerpen Court of Appeal, 18 fraternity members are found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and degrading treatment. Despite the severity of the charges and the public outrage, the fraternity members receive lenient sentences, resulting in a fine of $450 each and community service sentences of 200 or 300 hours. The students were additionally obligated to pay about $30,000 in damages to the Dia family. The court's decision sparks a wave of protests around Belgium. People take to the streets demanding justice for Sanda and stricter regulations against hazing. The case also sparks significant discussion about race and discrimination in Belgium and beyond. Sanda, a young man of African descent, was one of 2 students of color in the predominantly white fraternity. Critics argue that the fraternity's harsh treatment of Sanda and the subsequent lenient treatment of the fraternity members by the justice system highlight systematic racial biases. The case has ignited a broader conversation about the need for more inclusivity and diversity in Belgium's universities and social institutions. In the aftermath of the court's rulings on the Sanda Dia case, a wave of discontent sweeps across society. The shockingly lenient ruling sparks widespread dissatisfaction, with many expressing their displeasure on social media and through demonstrations. Accusations of class justice echo through society, as people disagree with the punishment handed out to the fraternity members involved in the hazing preceding Sanda Dia's death. In June 2023, Belgium's Parliament Justice Committee, acknowledging the public's outcry, urges the High Council for Justice to investigate the conduct of the judicial process. In response to the societal unrest, the Parliament has urged the High Council for Justice of Belgium to conduct an investigation into the Sanda Dia case. The Council has the authority to examine whether there were any errors by the judiciary in the conduct of the judicial process. Although it cannot judge the substance of a court decision, the Council will decide whether or not to launch an inquiry. The Parliament also plans to engage in a broader debate about class justice. They aim to address concerns about mechanisms within the legal system that may give rise to class injustice or the perception of it. This initiative is not only about the Sanda Dia case, but also about addressing structural issues within Belgium's justice system. So, what would drive the fraternity members to commit such horrific acts with complete disregard of Sanda's well-being? One of the primary factors influencing the actions of the fraternity members could be the power dynamics inherent in fraternities. Fraternities, by their very nature, are hierarchical structures where fraternity members hold positions of power and influence. This power structure, while fostering a sense of order and discipline, can also create an environment ripe for abuse. The fraternity members perched atop this hierarchy might feel a sense of entitlement or superiority, viewing the pledges as subordinates to be controlled and manipulated. This sense of entitlement can lead to dehumanization or objectification of the pledges. Dehumanization refers to the psychological process of viewing others as less than human, while objectification involves treating individuals as mere objects or tools. When the pledges are dehumanized or objectified, they are stripped of their individuality and humanity, reduced to mere objects in the eyes of the fraternity members. This psychological shift can make it easier for the fraternity members to inflict harm without feeling empathy or guilt. The dehumanization or objectification of the pledges is not an isolated phenomenon. It is a byproduct of the power dynamics within the fraternity. The fraternity members, emboldened by their positions of power, might feel justified in their actions, viewing the hazing rituals as a necessary part of the initiation process. This rationalization, coupled with the dehumanization of the pledges, can create a dangerous environment where harm is inflicted without remorse. The power dynamics within the fraternity can also influence the behavior of the pledges. The pledges, aware of their subordinate position, might feel compelled to endure the hazing rituals, fearing retaliation or rejection from the fraternity members. This fear, coupled with the desire to gain acceptance into the fraternity, can make the pledges vulnerable to abuse. Group thinking, a psychological phenomenon that can significantly influence group dynamics, could have played a substantial role in the actions of the fraternity members. Group thinking occurs when the desire for harmony or conformity within a group leads to irrational or dysfunctional decision-making outcome. In the context of a fraternity, this desire for harmony can be particularly strong, given the close-knit nature of these organizations and the emphasis they place on unity and brotherhood. Under the influence of group thinking, fraternity members might overlook or ignore the potential harm of their actions. The focus shifts from the well-being of the individual pledges to the preservation of the group's unity and traditions. In the case of Reuzegom, this could mean maintaining the barbaric rituals involved with its hazing, despite the clear physical and psychological harm it inflicts on the pledges. The fraternity members caught in the grip of group thinking might also downplay or dismiss any voices that challenge the tradition of hazing. The dismissal of dissent further reinforces the group's cohesion and unity, but at the cost of critical thinking and individual responsibility. It creates an echo chamber where harmful behaviors are not only tolerated but also encouraged. Group thinking can distort the fraternity's members' perception of their actions. They might view the hazing rituals as a necessary and harmless part of the initiation process, ignoring the clear signs of distress and harm. This distorted perception, fueled by group thinking, can lead to a dangerous disconnect between the fraternity members' actions and their understanding of those actions. The anonymous nature that a group setting provides could have significant influence on the actions of the fraternity members. This phenomenon, known as de-individualization, is a psychological state where individuals lose their sense of individual identity and moral responsibility when part of a group. In the context of a fraternity where group identity often overshadows individual identity, de-individualization can be particularly potent. Fraternity members might feel less personally responsible for their actions. The sense of individual accountability diminishes, replaced by a collective responsibility that is diffused among all group members. This diffusion of responsibility can lead to a dangerous disconnect between actions and their consequences, allowing individuals to engage in behaviors they would normally consider unacceptable. The loss of individual identity in a group setting can also lead to a reduced awareness of self. Fraternity members absorbed into the group identity might lose sight of their personal values and moral compass. This reduced self-awareness, coupled with the diminished sense of personal responsibility, can create an environment where harmful behaviors such as hazing are more likely to occur. De-individualization can also lead to an increased susceptibility to group norms and pressures. Fraternity members stripped of their individual identities might be more likely to conform to the group's norms, even if these norms involve harmful behaviors. This susceptibility to group norms, fueled by de-individualization, can further perpetuate the cycle of harmful behaviors within the fraternity. In conclusion, the tragic case of Sanda Dia serves as a reminder of the devastating consequences of hazing and the complex psychological factors that can perpetrate such harmful behaviors. The power dynamics inherent in fraternities, the influence of group thinking, and the psychological phenomenon of de-individualization All may have played significant roles in this tragedy. Sanda's story underscores the urgent need for cultural shift within fraternities and similar organizations. Where harmful traditions are challenged, individual accountability is emphasized, and the dignity and safety of all members are prioritized. What punishment do you think the fraternity members should have received? Why do you think nobody helped Sanda Dia when he became unresponsive? We want to give a huge thank you to everyone over on Patreon. We want to give a big shout out to Nexus, Big Pepperoni Pizza, Chrissy R, Catherine D, Tony S, and Dolce P. If you would like access to ad-free and uncensored versions of all Wicked videos, feel free to join our Patreon. Link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and join us next time when we explore the psychological maze of some of the most wicked people.